I am Dwight Drummond. Tonight, police released composite sketches and new details in the case of a young girl whose remains were found in a Rosedale dumpster.
We believe that it is unlikely that the child has ever been reported missing.
Investigators also releasing images of a vehicle spotted near the dumpster. We'll have the latest coming up. Plus,
he had some pretty accurate information, including address, location, approximate population of the event.
A Mississauga teen facing charges in the U.S. after online threats of a mass shooting targeting a Florida Pride event. And
we're going to dedicate this whole project to the idea of affordable housing and creating the much-needed affordable housing in the City of Toronto.
Looking at ways to tackle affordable housing from those in the industry. Toronto police are still working to identify the remains of a little girl found in a dumpster in Rosedale. Detectives releasing new composite sketches today with hopes someone can identify her. Kelda Ewan is live at Toronto Police Headquarters. And Kelda, the head of the homicide squad saying today it is unlikely the girl was ever reported missing.
That's right, Dwight. Well, after the remains were discovered last month, Toronto police say they went through missing children's cases from across Canada. They discovered 58 such cases, but no matches. So they say they do have reason to believe that this girl was never reported missing, at least not here in Canada. So what they're hoping now is that someone out there will be able to identify her through these new composite sketches. They have also identified a vehicle that they hope someone in the neighborhood saw.
There are two sketches. One is in black and white, and the other is in color.
Toronto police releasing these forensic composite sketches today of the little girl whose remains were found on May 2nd. The drawings show a black girl between 4 to 7 years old with curly hair sectioned into ponytails. Police say she is believed to be of African or mixed African descent and about 3 feet 6 inches tall.
I want to emphasize that the skin tone in the color photograph is an approximation and may not be completely accurate.
The remains were found in a construction disposal bin in front of a vacant residence on Dale Avenue near Castlefranc Road. Police believe the body was left there sometime between April 28th at noon and May 2nd before 5 p.m. Inspector Hank Zinga says police have also identified a vehicle of interest, releasing these photos from surveillance videos of a dark-colored Porsche Cayenne SUV with the model year between 2011 to 2014.
That car is literally captured on camera on Dale Avenue in the area of the dumpster, right in the time frame that we believe the body was dumped there, and inexplicably stops right by the dumpster for about 21 seconds.
Police also providing these stock images of the vehicle with hopes someone in the area will recognize it. They are also continuing to go through tips, reiterating that it's believed the girl may have been dead a year or longer when she was discovered.
One of the reports that we're still waiting on is from the forensic entomologist to try and date and geographically locate an area where the child may have come from. But if there's no obvious cause of death, it's a lot of work for the forensic pathologist to try and determine that cause of death, and it may be something that may remain undetermined for quite some time.
Zinga also said that he may have an update from the forensic pathologist either later this week or next week. In the meantime, Toronto police are asking anyone who may have information, even if they believe it to be insignificant, to come forward to them or to call Crime Stoppers. Now, when the release went out today, it was around like 12:15, and then they had the press conference here at 1:30. In between that time, during that time, police said they already received more tips. So they're asking anyone out there, keep the tips coming. Send it back to you, Dwight.
A real mystery for them, Kelda. Thank you. A GTA teen is under arrest tonight, accused of threatening a mass shooting at a gay pride event in Florida over the weekend. Police say the threat was thwarted thanks to help from a social media company. Chris Glover explains.
As people celebrated Pride in West Palm Beach this past Sunday, police there were hunting to thwart a mass shooter.
We had undercovers in the crowd. We had people on lookouts for him.
A random user of the online video chat platform Omegle captured video of a person wielding a gun, allegedly threatening to shoot up the West Palm Beach event. That random user notified police in nearby Miami.
It ended up being a really successful event, and we took all of the precautions that we could take.
He gave us the 100, the address of the block he was going to hit. So he knew the area very well. And that's why we didn't have any idea at that time he was out of the country.
Thousands of kilometers away in Mississauga, Ontario, less than 24 hours later, Florida police say local officers arrested and charged a 17-year-old boy.
There's two big hurdles. The first one being jurisdiction, being able to get the data, where is that data actually located? And the second is attribution, putting somebody behind that device, making the claim. So it is very difficult, and we don't see this often.
Due to anti-LGBTQ+ comments the suspect allegedly made, Florida police say expected charges of threatening to commit a mass shooting will likely include terrorism or hate.
I could say during his statement that there's no remorse, and he was a threat.
Organizers of Pride Toronto say security here will be enhanced this month as a result.
The alleged suspect is coming from right within our backyard. You know, we've now moved from a code yellow and we're now at a code red where we have to be prepared for anything.
Organizers of the West Palm Beach event say hate from within Florida is increasing, but the suspect's Toronto area connection was unsettling.
We think of Canada as a great alternative and a safe place and a very, affirming place for the LGBTQ community. So I was definitely surprised about that news.
This upcoming weekend is the 7th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting that targeted Orlando's queer community. Nearby in West Palm Beach, organizers say they'll continue to push for change through visibility while keeping safety top of mind. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Punjab police have arrested 8 people in connection with the murder of rapper Sidhu Moosewala. The 28-year-old who rose to fame in Brampton was shot dead in India on May 29th. Police say the suspects are in custody providing logistic support, conducting reconnaissance, and harboring the shooters. One of the people arrested allegedly kept tabs on the rapper by pretending to be a fan and took selfies with Moosewala minutes before his murder. The suspect also allegedly relayed information that Moosewala was not accompanied by his security guards and was traveling in a non-bulletproof vehicle. Police say that 4 shooters involved have been identified but haven't been found yet. Moosewala moved to Brampton in 2016 and attended Humber College. His journey as an international student resonated with many in the community. Hundreds attended a vigil this past weekend. Toronto Community Housing is home to over 100,000 people in the city, and that includes about 15,000 seniors whose needs are much different than other tenants. To focus on and provide better supports for their oldest tenants, the city has created a separate housing entity for them. Alicia Son has more on the new Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation.
我们就像一个大家庭一样的
We are like a big family to live here.
Sinan Wu has been the tenant representative at Greenwood Towers since
2009. I'm proud of her.
Wu will continue to advocate for better services and care for her neighbors in the senior dedicated building.
设备也齐全
Here, the environment is very good, it's very clean.
But now, instead of taking the issues to the Toronto Community Housing Corporation, which owns and manages 58,000 units for over 100,000 tenants, she'll be dealing with the newly created separate entity, the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, which will be in charge of operating the city's 83 seniors housing buildings, providing the services unique to their needs.
But I do hope that the separation of the seniors will allow us to focus on the particular needs of seniors and making sure they have a comfortable, dignified life at that stage of their life, and also then focus on even more keenly on the remaining needs of the other tenants that we serve.
At the official launch, Mayor John Tory insisted it's better for everyone living in Toronto community housing this way. Over the decades, TCHC has developed a reputation for poor service and repair backlogs. Just a week and a half ago, a ceiling collapsed at Swansea Mews, seriously injuring a tenant, displacing hundreds of others as a precaution.
I think the overall, state of well-being of Toronto community housing tenants will be better, just because we'll be able to focus more on them, as at the same time as we focus hard on the needs and particular supports that are required for our seniors.
TCHC will continue to own the buildings and are responsible for capital repairs. Residents living in the seniors' buildings will have a higher staff-to-tenant ratio to look after their needs, as well as access to health and social programs. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Finding housing that's affordable is next to impossible for many people right now. Hoping to address the issues, some of the players in the industry gathered in Toronto today to talk about what more can be done. Lorena Redekop reports.
It's a strip mall now in northwest Toronto. A developer wants to turn it into housing to look like this. 70% of the suites would be affordable, a mix of condos and rentals. It's a company that usually does for-profit developments.
We have not been mandated to, do an affordable housing component to this project. Rather, what we decided to do is that we're going to dedicate this whole project to the idea of affordable housing and creating the much-needed affordable housing in the city of Toronto.
For her, this project is about giving back, but you can't count on developers to do that. She'd like governments to provide incentives.
Help me there and allow me to bring in a product to the market that's lower than what is out there already, and help those kind of projects, not necessarily help all the developers with all of their projects.
The Provincial Housing Affordability Task Force also recommends speeding up the approvals process.
If you can shrink the approval process down from 5 years to 2 years, that's savings of big dollars.
He wants the province to take control to avoid building getting stalled by local councillors worried about votes in the next election.
If you can't get by the ward councillor, you ain't getting it approved. Even if planning likes it, even if Mayor Tory likes it, it's not going to happen. It's a huge problem that developers face every day.
Back at that strip mall that could be transformed into housing, people say lower cost housing is desperately needed.
It's too high. Nobody can afford. If you're getting minimum wage, you can hardly afford a house, a decent apartment.
$1,000 a month apartment for somebody on minimum wage it's not affordable.
This site is still years away from becoming a reality. The developer has submitted it for approval and is waiting. She wants all levels of government to work together to find solutions for affordable housing. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
It was the kind of day out there where you had to keep your umbrella close at all times. Toronto has been battered with heavy rain and some thunderstorms for much of the day. As you can see, it made walking and commuting a bit more challenging. The downpour prompted a weather alert from Environment Canada earlier today, warning that Toronto and surrounding areas could see as much as 50 millimeters of rain. And it felt like we got a lot of that today. We seem to be getting a break from the rain right now, though.
We sure are. And remember, Dwight, yesterday I warned you to take those umbrellas with you. So it's a good thing that you did. I'm hoping you did. And it is going to clear up going into tomorrow. The normal high temperature, usually this time of year, is 23 degrees. And today we are sitting just at that mark at 23 degrees. And the normal low is 13. And we are sitting a bit above that today at 15 degrees. Toronto today, it's 17 degrees. Windsor 22 so a little bit more of a hot spot right there. And we're a bit more on the cooler side if you take a look compared to other areas like Sarnia or London. But Mount Forest really is the coolest, sitting at 12 degrees, Barrie 14. But with that humidity that we had today, it did feel a lot warmer. So it felt like 19 degrees at this time. That's how it feels like. Windsor 25, so much warmer in Windsor compared to Toronto. St. Catharines 23, London 21. Now, as you could see, that precipitation is making its way out, so you will have a dry commute on your way home. Maybe a little bit of rain coming through, a little bit of clouds throughout the evening, but for the most part, it should be a dry commute on your way home. As you can see, that precipitation is making its way out. And as we head overnight, it will be 13 degrees with 40% chance of rain. And tomorrow, a nice dry commute as you start off your day, 22 degrees, a mix of sun and clouds.
Thank you, Dahlia.
Thanks, Ray.
This weather update is brought to you by Charlevoix Train, one of the most beautiful railways in Canada. Discover this spectacular railway from Quebec City.
Now that Premier Doug Ford has won his second straight majority, he has 4 years to make good on his re-election promises. So what are the major pledges Ford will have to keep? Our Queen's Park reporter, Mike Crawley, takes a look.
Workers in hard hats as a backdrop. That was a common theme for Doug Ford's campaign
appearances.
We've supported the hardworking women and men in this province, the union members, we always have. I love them.
Another theme, election promises that were a little vague on the details.
Rebuilding Ontario's economy with better jobs and bigger paychecks.
For instance, Ford pledged his re-elected Progressive Conservative government will build Highway 413 across the northwestern part of the GTA, but refused to give even a ballpark price tag.
We're going out for a bid process, and once we get the bid process, we'll have a better idea what it's cost.
Some Ford promises do have numbers attached, such as hiring thousands more doctors, nurses, and personal support workers.
It's time to get it done for the nurses and PSWs who want to work in Ontario.
The PCs promise to create 30,000 new long-term care spaces by 2028 and ensure 1.5 million new homes get built in the next decade. There's also a promise to keep housing costs down, although Ford never quite said what down means. Campaigning in London, he met these families and said they're priced out of owning a home.
I told them, I gave them my word, that will stop at nothing to make sure we address the housing crisis in Ontario.
Ford's housing action plan actually stopped short of quite a few things that his own expert panel recommended, including more density in neighborhoods of single-family homes. The most immediate promises Ford needs to fulfill? Cutting the gas tax on July 1st by nearly 6 cents a litre, and passing a budget that's nearly identical to the one his finance minister tabled in late April. One change the PCs will have to make to that budget, Ford promised during the campaign to increase Ontario disability support payments by 5%. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario's mask mandate for high-risk settings is set to expire this Saturday, though the province hasn't ruled out another extension. Masking requirements were lifted back in March for most settings, but remained in effect for high-risk locations like public transit, hospitals, retirement homes, and shelters. That mandate is currently scheduled to lift at midnight on Saturday, but the province says Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore, is reviewing key public health indicators and will advise the Ministry of Health on next steps. If the mandate is dropped, it would bring an end to more than 2 years of pandemic restrictions across the province. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is heading to the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles. Along the way, he's making a stop at NORAD headquarters in Colorado. Evan Dyer has the details about what to expect from the summit and the significance of the NORAD visit.
Prime Minister Trudeau's first stop is NORAD headquarters in Colorado, Cheyenne Mountain, the base designed to resist a direct nuclear strike, and it's the sort of the nerve center of North America's strategic air defense. And NORAD modernization has been a major issue this year for the U.S. and Canada, with the U.S. asking Canada as junior partner to contribute to develop new defenses to deal with a new threat. Hypersonic missiles being developed by both Russia and China that move much faster than the traditional ICBMs and therefore require a new kind of defense. We're not expecting an announcement, but we do expect Canada to contribute something like $1 billion to NORAD to develop those new defenses to deal with those newer, faster missiles whose launches really have to be detected before they happen in order to be able to defeat that threat. From there, he'll go to the Summit of Americas, which this year has a few defections and no-shows. The most significant one being President Andrés Manuel López Obrador of Mexico, usually known as AMLO, who says he's staying away in solidarity with 3 undemocratic countries that haven't been invited by the U.S. administration: Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. Now, there's a tradition of Cuba not being invited to the Summit of the Americas. It's only actually been to one. But this year, that's caused friction with a new wave of left-wing governments being elected in Latin America, some of them sympathetic to Cuba and Venezuela. Mexico taking the lead in boycotting this summit, but a few other defections as well. Bolivia and Honduras saying that they won't show up. Guatemala, a right-wing government, also not showing up for its own reasons, angry that the U.S. has accused the Alejandro Giammattei government of corruption. So for the Biden administration, this is a challenge. The main issue it hoped to discuss was migration, and AMLO, the president of Mexico, is key to solving that issue. So it's also trying to show that American influence in the Americas is not declining, that U.S. influence is not being displaced by China. The no-shows won't help for that either. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Oh, I remember these days. An early wake-up for many Toronto parents today, hoping to sign up their children for summer recreation programs this summer. For the first time since before the pandemic, the city programs will be running without pandemic restrictions. The city is offering 6,500 programs starting in July, including arts, sports, swimming, fitness, and wellness. Registration opened at 7 a.m. this morning. By 5:30 p.m., the city says it was 70% booked. It's been another tough year of pandemic learning for students. Early data suggests that millions of Canadian kids are behind in core subjects like math and literacy, and mental health is an issue as well. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson looks at how experts are trying to close the gap in the first part of a new series called The Learning Curve.
Just as different provinces had different responses to the pandemic, their plans to tackle the learning gap accrued over the last 2.5 years vary greatly too.
CBC News asked all provinces and territories about their plans to help kids catch up. Then we asked 3 independent education experts to review the documents sent to us. They all agree the plans are too vague. The experts say it's about more than just throwing money at learning recovery. Instead, they'd like to see targeted investments in key areas, including assessments, tutoring, curriculum adjustment, and mental health.
Education expert Paul Bennett says Alberta's plan is tops when it comes to assessment.
Alberta had the advantage of waking up sooner and identifying the challenge of learning recovery.
Alberta's math and reading assessments of the youngest grades began well before the pandemic and continued throughout it. These screenings, though optional, found that students were struggling in these key subjects compared to before the pandemic. So the province is making these tests mandatory for grades 1 through 3 starting in September.
That's where they gained an advantage. Other provinces, one at a time, gradually began to restore their provincial testing.
Several provinces have highlighted tutoring as a key part of their recovery strategy. Ontario and Quebec are allocating the most money for tutoring post-pandemic. So far, $175 and $82 million respectively. But one of our experts isn't pleased with Quebec's implementation.
Most of it was going to be done online. I'm not convinced that online tutoring is the way to go, given what we know about the virtual experience as it was.
Another thing our experts wanted to see is what's being done on curriculum reform. They say if, for example, students didn't learn what they needed to in grade 2 math, those lessons should be moved into grade 3.
I don't see any real curricular reform. Again, in the Alberta plan, there's more discussion around the younger years and reading, numeracy, literacy kind of things. Nothing to suggest that there's going to be an overhaul that really takes into consideration the new context.
Meanwhile, this expert is more impressed by the provinces that redefine the meaning of how well students are doing. The Northwest Territories said its education department will closely monitor the needs of NWT students using existing wellness data collections. In Nova Scotia, each school has received a healthy living grant to spend on activities that improve physical and mental health.
They were reaching out to staff and to students to ask them, how they were doing. So I think it's that kind of rich idea of measurement and assessment that we need beyond just the test scores.
Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
There is a broad shortage of workers across Canada. Many companies are complaining that their job postings are going unfilled. It's particularly true in Quebec, and employers there are using a long loophole, in the hopes of labor laws in the effort to solve the problem. Alison Northcott explains.
At this canteen, the youngest employee is just 11. The owner says not everyone is ready to work at that age, but says some are and are eager to. They have homework and final exams, says Pascal Lamarche, but they make it work and can get time off when they need it. With Quebec desperately short of workers, the province's Labour Minister says some employers are turning to younger people to fill their job needs. There's no minimum age to work in Quebec, but shifts can't interfere with school, and children under 14 need written permission from their parents.
Since I was little, I always wanted to get a job.
Leah Mercier is 15 and says she's worked every summer since 6th grade as a babysitter, a dog groomer, and in an art supply store.
Learning that confidence and learning how to set your boundaries with your bosses and coworkers is really good at a young age, because you're setting yourself up for success later on.
Statistics Canada doesn't break down labor data for workers under 15. BC recently raised its minimum working age from 12 to 16.
The actual economic context, the shortage in terms of workers.
This lawyer says with so many businesses eager to find workers, Quebec needs better protections for the youngest ones.
The younger they are, the more difficult it is to manage stressful situations such as productivity pressure or situation like sexism as well.
I'm extremely worried.
The Labour Minister says employers have legal responsibilities when it comes to young workers, but he's looking at improvements.
If we have to legislate to better, to make sure that the younger workers have a better supervision, I will do that.
There will also be training for employers to ensure young people are working reasonable hours in safe environments. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
An ongoing Russian blockade of ports has all but stopped grain exports from Ukraine. Millions of tons of grain are locked up inside the country. This year's harvest is coming and there's no place to put it. Ukraine and its allies are struggling to get the shipments out to the rest of the world. Margaret Evans has more.
The ordered rows of farmland in southwest Ukraine, so at odds with the chaos of a country under siege. In one of the world's great breadbaskets, it should offer a sense of comfort, fields of wheat just starting to deepen in color. Instead, the coming harvest carries with it a sense of crisis. The Petrodolinska Agricultural Farm. It's home to about 700 head of cattle and around 1,000 hectares of land. Cattle feed mixed in-house is not a problem. Storing wheat headed for world markets is. Because some of the grain from previous harvests is still here, says the farm's chief technologist, while the next one is right around the corner. But with Ukraine's major ports blocked by Russia, experts say more than 20 million tons of harvested grain is stuck, with serious implications for global hunger. Efforts to ship by road and rail have been hampered by logistical problems.
It's a nightmare.
Freight expert Oleg Kostyuk says the will is there, but not the capacity.
Small ports on Danube River, it might be another solution. But even though if everything will work well, road, railroad and Danube River ports, we will be able to export like 2, maybe 3 million tons.
Not nearly enough. And critics accuse Russia of weaponizing hunger. It's led to calls for a safe corridor through the Black Sea, where a handful of mines have recently washed ashore. The Russians have used anchor mines, says Oleksandr Kovalenko. They're more or less stationary, and anti-mine ships would need a month or two to make a corridor through them. And a great deal of political will. Farmer Ihor Shumeko is doubtful. Western countries have the fleet to do it, he says, but the Russians won't go for it. They want to keep us down, politically and psychologically. All this in a corner of Ukraine where farmers don't have to worry about daily shelling in the fields, at least not yet. Time is slipping away here, like grain in an hourglass. Margaret Evans, CBC News, near Odessa.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson remains on the job today after surviving a confidence vote and a challenge to his leadership from within his own party. But his political future is anything but certain as he battles to win back the support of colleagues and the public. Salima Shivji has more now from London.
Boris Johnson is trying very hard to put a positive spin on the results of the no confidence vote, saying it is a convincing and decisive win, one that will allow his government to move on and focus on other issues.
We're able now to draw a line under the issues that our opponents want to talk about, and we're able to get on with talking about what I think the people in this country want us to talk about, which is what we are doing to help them and to take the country forward.
But the narrow margin is anything but a win politically. 211 MPs may have stood by the British Prime Minister, but a full 148 Tory MPs voted against him, saying they no longer have any confidence in their leader and want him out. Johnson's cabinet, his ministers, are standing by him firmly for now. And the Conservative Party's rules do dictate that any leader who wins a no-confidence vote is safe from another such challenge for the next year. But the backbench of rebellious MPs is promising more action, saying rules can easily be changed.
Given the mood of the public, the vote we've had here tonight, that the Cabinet would go and tell the Prime Minister that, in Steve Baker's words, the gig's up. I'll make a prediction. We're going to have a new Prime Minister, a new leader of the Conservative Party by party conference this year.
That conference is this fall in October, and what's striking here are the voices that are speaking out against Johnson. Even former Conservative leader William Hague says the damage done to this Prime Minister, to Boris Johnson, is just too severe and that he must go. Johnson needs to find some sort of honourable exit, Hague says. And what really counts in all of this is how voters are feeling.
I think 140 people on the payroll votes will be considering whether or not they did the right thing yesterday.
Perhaps when there's no obvious person that you can say they are better than Boris, well, the devil you know rather than the devil you don't.
2 tricky by-elections coming up later this month could spell more trouble for Johnson. The Tories do hold both of those seats, but even if they lose one of them, that will fuel the Prime Minister's critics and prove difficult for a politician trying to turn the page and quell the discontent in his own divided party. Salima Shivji, CBC News, London.
The Canadian men's soccer team has resumed training in Vancouver after a contract dispute with soccer's national governing body. The players say they want more transparency from Canada Soccer, changes in the organization's leadership, and World Cup compensation that includes 40% of prize money and a comprehensive friends and family package for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. The dispute resulted in a game being cancelled this past weekend.
Here's McCarr, loose at goal, Arturi Lekanen has scored, and for the second straight year, he sent his team in overtime to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, no more Canadian teams. The last hope for Canadians to play for a Stanley Cup was snuffed out last night. The Avalanche completed the series sweep to eliminate Edmonton in 4 straight games. They're moving on to the Stanley Cup final, where they will face either the New York Rangers or 2-time defending Cup winners Tampa Bay. Remember that? The Lightning trail in that series 2-1. And I won't whine about another year where the Leafs were knocked out in the first round. Let's talk about the weather, Dahlia.
Yeah, Dwight, you probably came into work with one of these, right?
Yes,
An umbrella.
I did.
Yeah, you won't need that for tomorrow. So let's start off with the current highs this time of year. So right now, actually, we're going to get a break from the rain tonight. And then as we head into tomorrow, we're going to be able to go outside and enjoy that sunshine. Like I said, you won't need that umbrella that I just dropped earlier, but you will need it handy as we go on throughout the week. Today, we are sitting currently at 17 degrees, just like Mississauga and Markham as well. The cooler side is more so Kitchener and Hamilton. St. Catharines, 19 degrees. Same thing with Oshawa, a little bit on the warmer side out there. And with that humidity that we have, we're sitting at 19 degrees this afternoon. Mississauga, 19 as well. Hamilton, 19. St. Catharines, a little bit of a hot spot there, 23 degrees. And as you can see, the clouds and the precipitation are making its way out for that clear, dry commute home this evening. But as we head into tomorrow, as you can see, the clouds will continue to make their way out. Wednesday, you see those clouds going away, and you start to see a little bit of that precipitation activity coming in on Thursday at around 1 a.m. So you might want to have your umbrella handy with you or a raincoat. We did get a break on Wednesday, but it will be making its way Thursday. Up until the evening on Thursday at around 7 o'clock, we see those clouds clearing away. Overnight tonight in Toronto, 13 degrees. There is a bit of like 40% chance of rain, but that will clear up by tomorrow as we head in. As you commute to work, tomorrow will be a dry commute. Mississauga and Hamilton, precipitation there as well. The clouds will be clearing out throughout the evening. And a look at your 5-day forecast. Tomorrow, 22 degrees. Like we said, you get that sunshine peeking through. We get a nice little break because Thursday comes around and so does the rain. 22 degrees, 60% chance of rain, and a little bit cooler in the evening, 13 degrees. Friday, you get that sunshine, 23 degrees, 12 degrees by the evening. Saturday and Sunday, as we go into the weekend, those wet conditions again. So maybe some more of those indoor activities if you were thinking of going out.
Plus, the flowers needed. Thank you, Dahlia.
They sure do.
The city of Mississauga is ready to forge forward after 2 difficult years of the pandemic. Today, Mayor Bonnie Crombie held her State of the City address and laid out the city's plans to rebuild. Greg Ross has the details.
The reality is that businesses have not faced so much uncertainty in generations.
Mayor Bonnie Crombie says despite a tough couple of years, she's confident the future is looking bright in Mississauga. But there is still plenty of work to be done as the city digs out of a massive deficit.
We faced initially a $100 million deficit, but of course we implemented a number of mitigating measures to bring our deficit down to $50 million. We've had hiring freezes, we've slashed our spending, we've done everything we can.
Crombie says she's looking to other levels of government for more help moving forward. She says they also have big plans to attract new business from around the world.
We are shedding our suburban image, as you heard me talk about. We are attracting new investment, new businesses coming in, and also those that are existing, they're expanding.
Those businesses are for the most part large corporations. Mississauga's small business community is still hurting.
We haven't been through the recovery process yet for small business. They're still in it. They've accumulated a pile of debt, many of them.
Small businesses that were able to survive the worst of the pandemic are still dealing with staffing issues, with the labor force still not back to where it was in 2019.
Even at our event today, where we are in a large convention center service industry, it was hit and miss in terms of are we going to have enough staff?
Like many GTA cities, Mississauga has a big affordability issue, a problem the mayor says they can't solve alone.
Rising inflation, rising housing costs, the price of food, gas have all escalated. So these are issues that we have to work together with all 3 levels of government to solve.
Mayor Crombie says the city does have a lot to look forward to over the next year, with the Mississauga LRT getting closer to completion, as well as plans to expand the city's downtown core and redevelop the waterfront. Greg Ross, CBC News, Mississauga.
Toronto Police are marking National Indigenous History Month. The kickoff event today focused on acknowledging survivors of residential school system and on reconciliation.
We can never be made whole. But what we can do is recognize the mistakes made in the past and honor the strength of those who survived through that dark period in Canada's history. We must all resolve to go above and beyond to make a concerted effort to be better for the next 7 generations.
Sanderson pointing out that the Toronto Police Service is making progress in its relations with Indigenous communities. She says the service has expanded personnel in the Aboriginal Peacekeeping Unit and is also planning to restart its Aboriginal Liaison Officer program in the near future. As we head to break, let's take a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX closed up by 109 points. The Dow climbed by 264 points, and the dollar traded higher at 79.65 cents US. We'll be right back. The newest Avenger in Marvel's cinematic universe is from Markham, Ontario. Iman Vellani plays superhero Ms. Marvel in the new Disney Plus show. She recently came home after wrapping up production. I had a chance to catch up with Vellani and talk about how this super fan of the Marvel Universe is now part of it.
It's not really the brown girls from Jersey City who save the world.
How does it feel to be back home after wrapping up the production of Ms. Marvel?
It feels so good. It feels comfortable. You know, it's been sensory overload in the last 2 years. So now I'm just back in my hometown, Tim Hortons, all I need. Kamala. Another Avenger shirt.
You know, Kamala is a normal teenager going through school when she discovers, she has these superpowers. She says life is better with superpowers. Growing up here in Canada in high school, could you maybe use some superpowers? Maybe not morphing into different shapes, but would that have been helpful?
I don't know if superpowers would have taken away from the awkwardness of my coming of age, if you will.
And she's going through that in the show, too, because after the powers, when she walks down the hallway after she discovers power, she's like a totally different person. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the confidence of just knowing that you're better than everyone else and no one knows it. Yeah.
Are there any similarities between, Iman's teenage years and Kamala's teenage years?
Yeah, I literally put my entire self into this show. Before we started filming, I was like on calls with our producers and directors. And they were like, okay, just like tell us, so who was your favorite teacher? What did you do in high school? Like, who did you have a crush on? Like, everything just about my high school life, and they just put so much of that into the story, and it just made it really easy for me to kind of slip into the character as well.
Dressing up as Captain Marvel's weird. I spend too much time in Fantasyland.
You said it's easy to slip into the character. What a lot of folks don't know, like, this is your first big role.
It's my first role.
How do you go from, being this Markham, teenager, to getting, like, Miss Marvel?
Yeah.
How did it come about? How did it happen?
WhatsApp.
You've been online a long time.
I have. I mean, my aunt sent me a WhatsApp forward that she got through this entire forward chain of Miss Marvel casting calls. And I'm like, look, this is not real. I don't know what casting calls look like, but they don't just come from WhatsApp. It was real. It worked out. I sent my self-tape, and then 2 days later, they called me to LA.
But you knew this character.
I knew it by the back of my hand. Yeah. I read all the comics when I was in high school.
Tell us how you discovered Miss Marvel yourself. Somebody that looked like you in a comic. I remember when I discovered Black Panther when I was young, and I thought that was so cool to see myself represented like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was an MCU fan growing up, and I just had the fattest crush on Iron Man, and I wanted more Iron Man, and so my high school is right across from a comic book shop, so I would just pop by, spent all my allowance on Iron Man comics, and then found an Ironheart comic with Riri Williams, and Kamala was on the cover of that one, and I was like, oh my God, brown girl, who's she?
Wow.
Yeah, that sent me into a wormhole of Miss Marvel comics, and I dressed up as her on Halloween, and now I have a real suit that's made for me.
I'm a superhero.
So this character is very specific, but it's also very universal.
Yeah.
What do you hope people take away from it? How do you hope people relate to this character?
Yeah, I do think our show has such a universal appeal and charm with the way we showcase fan culture and religion and action and coming of age. It's a lot to juggle, but
and immigrants and dealing with parents.
But these stories are so true, and I hope Marvel fans can kind of relate to Kamala on a real cellular level. The show is a love letter to the fans. We want to encourage and appreciate and motivate fans to continue making art and cosplays and all the Reddit forums, because those matter, and it's a lot of work being a Marvel fan. Like this fandom, we're 34 projects in. It's hard.
That I'll make Captain Marvel in court, and we'll be the first case in the American judiciary to hug it out.
But you're no longer a fan now. You are part of the Marvel universe. You could be on that screen with Iron Man.
I am still a fan first. No,
you could be up there with Iron Man.
He's so dead.
No, bring him back. Come on. What's it like playing in the Marvel universe? Come on, like everybody would love to be a Marvel superhero.
It's intimidating. I'm. Working with the people I idolize. The first person I got starstruck with was Sarah Finn, who's the casting director, and then Luis Despacito, who's Marvel's EP, and so that was just
And you knew all these people before?
Yes, Sarah was like, so we're gonna have someone direct your screen test, and I was like, who? And she's like, oh, it's someone who did the first season of Agent Carter. I was like, is Luis Despacito? And she was like, yeah, you weirdo.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, I know my stuff.
Did something happen to you?
No, why? Did you hear something?
Kamala. What's next for you in this Marvel universe? Are you hoping that you're a regular character in all these movies now?
I mean, we already shot the Marvels with Brie Larson and Tiana Paris.
That's kind of cool.
That was really fun, just being on screen with like more people in super suits, because I was very much the only person on the show, and so it's just nice to kind of have the same shoulder pains as other people. So yeah.
That's so cool to have you home. It's so cool to have you one of us now in the Marvel universe, and I feel like talking like dreams do come true.
As cheesy as it sounds, you're true. Yeah, it's right. Thank you, man.
Thank you. The people have voted, and 4 streets in Toronto have made it onto the CAA's annual Worst Roads list. Voters nominated 3,000 roads in 182 municipalities across Ontario, citing potholes, poor maintenance, and poor biking infrastructure. Lakeshore East and Finch West made the top 10, another congested Toronto road well known for its many ongoing construction. Spots took spots 2 and 6.
Wellington Avenue West and East took 2 spots this year. It has in the past as well, but it's also right beside the largest transit infrastructure project I think this country has seen in ever. So not surprising that there's a significant amount of frustration.
Oh, it's significant. Taking the top spot is Barton Street in Hamilton. It took the road just 3 years to climb from 5th to 1st, with potholes and severe cracking in the pavement among the biggest issues. And it's also very wet today there, Dahlia.
That's right, Dwight. But you know what? We have some dry conditions for your commute to work tomorrow. I mean, if you could see here, the clouds and the precipitation are already making its way out, but the clouds are sticking around still a little bit. That means that tonight there is some rain that should be coming through. Currently, we're sitting at 17 degrees. Winds are 22, a little bit on the warmer side there, 18 degrees in Oshawa. And overnight, it'll be 13 degrees. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a chance of showers, about 40% chance of showers. And tomorrow afternoon, 22 degrees. So you're going to need the sunglasses for tomorrow. 22 degrees, 14 degrees by the evening. And then we need those umbrellas again for Thursday, 22 degrees, 60% chance. Friday, put those sunglasses on because you're going to need them. 23 degrees, 12 degrees by the evening.
And you know, I wear mine at night too, so I've got a pair of those. Thank you for that, Dahlia.
We need them, right?
Yes.
See you, Dwight. Have a good
Loving
night.
the shades, loving the shades. That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Late night is preempted for hockey tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Stay safe out there and have a great night, everybody.